Stone Cold, the Hellraiser is back!
Here we go! Evolution of the Shield!
John Cena versus the Showstopper!
Hulk Hogan and The Rock in the same ring!
You will never take my place at the head of the table!
Undertaker! On the Hell's Gate submission! Oh my God! What?
My God, Michaels! Just kick Cena's head off!
The Monday Night Wars have come to WrestleMania!
It'll be The Rock! It'll be Austin one-on-one!
Third and five to the Undertaker!
Do you believe in miracles?
The streak is over!
Hey, what's going on, guys, and welcome back to WWE Retro on the WWE podcast on this Friday, March 17th. Although, I reckon by the time you guys are hearing this, it is at least March 18th, Saturday, because that will be twofold. I am recording this later on March 17th, around 7:15 Eastern Time, and Matt is down in Florida on vacation, so I can't imagine he's going to be in a mega rush to get this uploaded right away, and nor should he, right? Like, I think that Matt has earned some much-needed time off down in the Sunshine State, and good on him for taking a break and really putting his feet up. It is well-deserved. But before we get into Retro today, and what we are going to be talking about is Vengeance 2005, and there was a specific thing that kind of made me want to cover this pay-per-view. But before we get into that, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, and I think I just want to bring it up quickly here because I really do believe that, how would you say, it needs to be said, and based on the fact that it's not going to be able to be said on the current state of WWE this week because of Matt being on vacation, I just want to get it out here. As you guys know, I've always kind of been a defender of Bray Wyatt, just as someone who was very, very excited for his return, and someone that I think captivates audiences even when he isn't saying a whole lot, and even when, let's say that you how would you say, you kind of look back and realize that he's not really saying a lot. In the moment, he still is very much saying things that really captivate your attention, and not so much in the way of what he's saying, the actual content, the content of what he's saying, but the way he says it, his delivery. But, you know, after a really interesting and captivating return, and I think that's the best word to describe Bray Wyatt, is captivating, it has really been an unfortunate return run to the company. And I know that this most recent, I guess, speed bump, if you will, is not his fault. Presumably, it is because he is dealing with a physical issue. And if he is dealing with an injury, you know, best to him and speedy recovery. You never want to see someone be on the sidelines with injury, especially in WrestleMania season. But I can't help but feel that this Bray Wyatt experiment is going to ultimately come to an end. And I don't think it's only his fault. I do think that if you rewound the clock to 6, 7, 8 years ago, there was a period when Bray Wyatt first came onto the main roster that WWE and Vince McMahon specifically did drop the ball. I think that Bray Wyatt had a lot of potential. But unfortunately, in this most recent return to the company, whether that be, you know, losing that momentum that he had all those years ago, or giving him too much creative control and him kind of going off the deep end with it, for lack of better words, it just feels like Bray Wyatt, the boat of Bray Wyatt has sailed already. And you know, that's coming from someone who, every time Matt and I talk about it, I always try and look at the positive side with him. But it just feels that if he misses WrestleMania, and it sure as hell seems like he is going to, it is going to take so much wind out of his sails. And, you know, I know he's done live events, but only one televised match, the Mountain Dew Pitch Black match, which was very, very underwhelming. You know, the underwhelming non-reveal that was Uncle Howdy. You get, you know, the whole White Rabbit stuff that was never really, I guess, explained. All the barcode stuff and all the build to his return was done so brilliantly. And it is kind of unfortunate that it has all kind of culminated in just a very, very disappointing angle. So, all in all, I just wanted to kind of give my 2 cents on Bray Wyatt. And although I am still holding out hope, and as I've said numerous times here, I will always try and give him the benefit of the doubt because of how captivating he is, I'm starting to think that maybe, just maybe, we are approaching the finish line of Bray Wyatt. But anyway, that's not why you guys are here. You are here to go back in time for some retro, and we are going to be covering Vengeance 2005 that was held in June, and a pay-per-view that for me was really encouraged to cover because of the Batista Triple H Rivals episode that came out on A&E last Sunday. And look, this was a very good time in wrestling. This was peak wrestling in terms of my interest in the business. I think that in 05 you were starting to get to the final years of the Ruthless Aggression era, for sure. I think that there were a lot of big-time breakout stars here. And I think that this pay-per-view in particular, the 3 main matches were probably matches that could have been mega pay-per-view worthy, like a WrestleMania or SummerSlam or Royal Rumble. And the biggest part about that is because WWE was in the midst of an NHL shows where my mind is at, of a WWE draft. And not the typical draft that we see today where everyone just goes into one big pool and gets redrafted and the rosters are reset, or it's all done on one night. This was a very unique draft, and one that I've actually covered before. I think it was one time, oddly enough, when Matt used to do his wrestling nostalgia shows, which was kind of like the predecessor to my show. And one time when he was on vacation, I did cover it for him one time, and I covered that particular draft. Or I may have done it on Retro too, when I rebranded the show from Rivalries to Retro. But due to the draft, we had 2 world champions on the same brand. And I know that nowadays that doesn't seem like that big of a deal. We have Roman Reigns holding both world titles. And last year, even when Brock had one, they were crossing over from Raw to SmackDown like it was nothing. But at this point in time in WWE, the brand split really meant something. And the brand split was adhered to in a big and serious fashion. And to have 2 world champions on one show was crazy. Now, albeit it had only been for a few weeks, but it all started with the first draft pick going to Monday Night Raw to kick off the draft in early June.
Would you please welcome my guest tonight, the very first pick of the draft lottery? Come on down!
Who is it? Who is it? Is it a he or a she?
Come on out!
Well, whoever it is, they're late. Is there really somebody? What the hell?
And I remember watching that and being so, shocked and just like, oh my God, what are they going to do? There's 2 world champions on both shows. What does this mean for SmackDown? And it really just felt like a monumental shift in the WWE landscape. John Cena, who had just won the WWE Championship 3 months prior at WrestleMania 21 against JBL, successfully, defended it against JBL at the Judgment Day pay-per-view in an I Quit match, I believe. So you just had a mega shift here. And like JR just said, or Jerry Lawler, that Eric Bischoff, then GM of Monday Night Raw, wasn't lying when it was the biggest acquisition in Monday Night Raw history. And at this point in time, it was the time of, or the era rather, of brand exclusive pay-per-views, with the exceptions of the Big Four, Mania, Rumble, Survivor Series, SummerSlam. So this was going to be the first non-Big Four pay-per-view in which both world titles were defended in over 2 years' time, I want to say. I think the last time they had done that, both titles have been defended, was Judgment Day 2003. Because the first brand exclusive pay-per-view was, ironically enough, Vengeance 03, when it belonged to SmackDown, now it being a Raw pay-per-view. So he obviously shows up on Monday Night Raw on the Jericho highlight reel. Christian comes out, and this leads to a triple threat match at Vengeance for the WWE Championship. Now, the other major story on Monday Night Raw, and the predominant story on Monday Night Raw going back to WrestleMania, was Batista versus Triple H for the World Heavyweight Championship. Batista beat Triple H at WrestleMania. He beat him at Backlash, which led Batista to believe that he was finally done with Triple H once and for all. Triple H had gone away for a few weeks. He had walked out on Monday Night Raw, and now Batista was becoming pretty friendly with Ric Flair. Triple H returns. Ric Flair hits Batista with a low blow. Triple H destroys Batista with the sledgehammer, leading to their final clash inside Hell in a Cell at Vengeance 2005. So now you have a Raw brand exclusive pay-per-view with a triple threat match with John Cena defending the WWE Championship against Chris Jericho and Christian, and then you have Batista defending the World Heavyweight title inside Hell in a Cell against Triple H. Just an absolute locked and loaded double main event here, going into a B-level pay-per-view for all intents and purposes. But beyond that, you had Shawn Michaels and a recently drafted to Raw Kurt Angle having the second installment of their match, or of their rivalry, one that had a historic clash at WrestleMania 21 2.5 months prior, when Kurt Angle was a member of SmackDown and it was billed as interpromotional. So the pay-per-view opens up on Sunday Night Heat with the Hurricane and Rosie successfully defending the Raw Tag Team Championships against the Heartthrobs. I mean, Antonio and Romeo, they lasted for a hot minute, were never taken overly seriously, and they lose out to the Hurricane and Rosie. In my opinion, one of the more underrated tag teams of the Ruthless Aggression era. Then you have Carlito successfully defend the Intercontinental Championship against Shelton Benjamin in 12 minutes and 47 seconds. Carlito, again, another guy who had just been drafted from Raw, or from SmackDown over to Monday Night Raw, and infamously defeated Shelton Benjamin on his first night on Monday Night Raw for the Intercontinental Championship. Very similar to 10 months prior, during his first night on SmackDown, he defeated John Cena for the United States Championship. So Carlito stays consistent that every time he shows up on a new brand on his first night, he wins that brand's respective middle card championship. Victoria defeats Christy Hemme in a singles match in 5 minutes and 11 seconds. I don't think anyone really cared all that much. Unfortunately, it was a very unfortunate time in the women's division. Thank God that we've come so far. But on a side note, I have always found Victoria to be a very underrated wrestler at this point in time, and I too think that she would have been someone that maybe in the current confines of WWE and the current landscape when women are treated with much more respect and legitimacy, I think she could have been something special here, specifically as a heel. Then you get Kane defeating Lita in a singles match that went 11 minutes and 20 seconds. This was during the storyline when Edge was Mr. Money in the Bank. He had just aligned himself with Lita, his real-life girlfriend, who on screen was married to Kane before which kind of kickstarted this angle between Kane and Edge. And this was kind of like the precursor to the real-life beef between Edge and Matt Hardy that would eventually come to life on television in the summer of 2005. So, a decent card to open up the Intercontinental Championship, Kane versus Edge. Pretty good card already. Then we get to the fifth match of the night, Shawn Michaels against Kurt Angle in a match that went 26 minutes. And I gotta tell you, it is a reason why both of these guys are referred to as some of the best to ever lace up the boots.
Losing at WrestleMania, returning at Vengeance to win this amazing match with Kurt Angle somehow, someway. Michael just refusing to give up, but never stop his heart kick. BKK, as far as I'm concerned.
So as JR says, who I let that play a little longer because Jim Ross really kind of explained it bit by bit as to why this victory for Shawn Michaels was just so important. Loses at WrestleMania, returns at Vengeance, and defeats the guy who came out victorious during their match at WrestleMania. So they're even, and then they have the rubber match at SummerSlam 2005. And I believe, or no, it wasn't even at SummerSlam 2005 because that's when Shawn Michaels faced off against Hulk Hogan. So I'm not actually sure when they ended up having their rubber match, easy enough for me to say, or if they even had one at all. I will have to check that out. But at this point, the score was 1-1 between Angle and Shawn Michaels, and deservingly so, based on just how amazing each of these two guys were. So you have now the first main event, the WWE Championship triple threat match between Christian, Chris Jericho, and John Cena. John Cena just getting his feet wet on Monday Night Raw. Obviously, Christian and Chris Jericho, long-time standing pillars of Monday Night Raw, had been part of the brand for, I want to say, almost 3 years at this point, at least 2.5. And both of them had kind of been stuck in like that middle card. Obviously, Chris Jericho had the pedigree, no pun intended, of being a 2-time world champion before this, and Christian had only ever reached the Intercontinental Championship status, but both had legitimate, I guess, clout to challenge John Cena specifically in a triple threat match for the title. And this would ultimately lead to a singles feud between John Cena and Chris Jericho after the outcome and fallout of this match.
How did Cena survive that? How did John Cena around the basin again? Inside to the outside. And then Jericho trying to climb the walls. He got him! The walls are in. Stop! Get the money! Show me the money! Somebody stop Jericho! He can't become the WWE champion!
So John Cena successfully defends the WWE Championship against Jericho and Christian, and as JR alludes to, in his first ever Raw pay-per-view match. And very good match, and like I said before the clip, it ultimately would lead to a program between John Cena and Chris Jericho that culminates at actually the Raw after SummerSlam 2005, which would then see Jericho leave the company for just over 2 years. And in the way of Christian, this was his last night as a part of Monday Night Raw, or maybe the Raw right after. But that week, he would be one of the 2 final draft picks to be drafted to SmackDown. And he would quickly leave the company as well. So, I mean, it was kind of like the swan song for both Christian and Chris Jericho here to get their final kicks at the can in the main event. More specifically Christian, because obviously, as I just mentioned, Jericho had about 2 more months left of runway in his case. And in Christian's case, I mean, he never really had a crack at a main event title before this. I'm sure if I really dug around, I could find one, but this was one of the first major times where going into a pay-per-view, he was a part of a program that featured a world championship. And then we obviously get Batista versus Triple H inside Hell in a Cell. They had 2 matches before, and now this was going to be the one that puts a bow on it. And, you know, as Matt always says, and as we're kind of going to see at this year's WrestleMania between Edge and Finn Balor, Hell in a Cell is typically reserved for the final match for a very, very intense program and intense rivalry. And this is one that I think was arguably never better suited. And in my opinion, one of the best Hell in a Cell matches I've ever seen. And I think that coming into this match, if I'm not mistaken, Triple H was undefeated inside Hell in a Cell, and off the top of my head, I think he had faced Shawn Michaels, he had faced Kevin Nash, he had faced, I believe, Mick Foley, he had faced, there's one other guy, Chris Jericho. So this really was Triple H's match, and the one that he figured that he couldn't lose, and he thought that he would finally be able to get the one-up on Batista. And this was an intense contest, and the ending to it was just as intense as one would imagine.
What in the hell has Batista got on his mind? What could this man be thinking? He may not even be in his right mind right now. Has the Hell in a Cell changed the heart and the soul of Batista? Oh, he's become evil, all right. He's thinking evil thoughts. He wants... No! Neither of these two, in my view, will ever be the same. They could both be great, but they're never going to be the same after this match tonight. I don't care what anybody says. Irish whip and the steel. No turnbuckles. It was steel. Oh, no. Well, that's true. That's the way it ever affects. I see it. I see it. Comes up. Comes down. And we know what that means. He wants to end this. He wants to put Triple H out of his misery. There you go. Batista thinking, how do you think about Batista bound? Wait, hold on. There you go. Henry. Yes. Henry. Yes. Henry. Finish him. He got new champion. The pillar. No. Oh, my God. Batista kicked out of the pedigree. The world is done. The Batista chip. Somehow Batista, the big that out here, bang! They're getting into cerebral assassin, looking to physically dissect the world's heavyweight champion. I have no idea what the game has on his mind, but you can bet your bottom dollar he's got some damn sure evil intentions. Oh my God, look at this. You don't think you're serious in here? You don't think? Yes. You don't think a triple? Yeah, pedigree. Right on the steel stairs. I love it. Pedigree his ass. Pedigree, put him away. Right on the, yeah. Oh, look out. Wait a minute. The counter. The counter. No. Buster on the steel. Oh, no. The love of God. Buster on it. And both men are suffering, but a title still on the line. Blade's rising and pain. I don't think he adversary does so. Try to get up, Dave. Try to get up. Batista did it! Batista, what the hell? And he threw off that still World Heavyweight Champion, Batista! What an amazing display of courage by both men. The game had intended. There's the gun, so to speak, that's still in their hand of the gunslinger Triple H, but it was the world's champion who beat the game to the punch with the Batista bomb. Well, we wondered if the third time would be the charm. We wondered if Batista would have what it takes to defeat Triple H in his home, in his house. Well, there we do know. Yes, the answer is a big fat yes. This was the turning point of the match against me. Triple H thought he had him on with that huge pedigree. And when Batista willed himself out, look at this. Now, he escaped the pedigree of the game. And to me, it was the turning point. Watch this right here, the spine buster. Good God Almighty. The body's not meant for that. He may be a little good bastard, but he is a human being. Look at this. I thought the game had that sledgehammer touch. But like you said, Batista beat him to the ground and pulled the trigger first. Triple H defeated for the first time in the Hell in a Cell. That's 3-0 for Batista over the game. Batista's first feature in the Hell in a Cell. You see the results, and Batista's still the world's heavyweight champion. One of those.
And JR says it there. Triple H's undefeated streak inside Hell in a Cell comes to an end, and you know, that was one of the first times. And Batista was one of the only guys that you ever saw truly brutalize Triple H in a ton of ways. And he really was like Triple H's kryptonite for a lot of years. And that's why I found the Rivals episode of these two on A&E. I really suggest you guys go watch that. So intriguing, because I don't think we appreciate how crucial this rivalry was for both men. It made Batista, and obviously John Cena would go on to become the face of the company and all that, but at this point in time, both had been world champion and WWE champion for an equal amount of time, both getting the crown at WrestleMania 21. But I would make the case that Batista was even more red hot than John Cena at this point, because of just how much his program with Triple H meant. And let's call a spade. Beating Triple H is a lot more significant than beating John Bradshaw Layfield. And, obviously we know that these two would end their rivalry at WrestleMania 35. Triple H would finally get one up on Batista and retire Batista in 2019. A very good match in their own right there. But this match in particular was absolutely brutal. And Batista would ultimately end up going to SmackDown later in the week, as the championships ultimately would swap. And it was kind of like an unofficial crowning of John Cena being the guy over Batista, which, I mean, I guess looking back on it, that certainly was the right decision. But at this time, you could certainly make the case that Batista was the more intense competitor. But there's one more clip I want to show you, one that I had actually never seen before I watched the A&E documentary. And that's weird for me, because I thought I'd seen every bit of footage when it pertained to the Ruthless Aggression era. But it was of Triple H backstage with Ric Flair after this Hell in a Cell match with Batista. And after seeing and hearing what these two had to say to each other, it kind of encapsulated everything what this pay-per-view was about, and more so what this rivalry was about. Such a cool clip. You know, these guys had just spent the last 3 or 4 months killing each other, culminating inside Hell in a Cell. Triple H covered in blood, just took an ass kicking, and Batista says it's over. Damn right it's over. And they hug and embrace, and Triple H says that's evolution. And it not only put a bow on this rivalry, but it put a bow on Evolution, a faction and a storyline that had kind of run Monday Night Raw for 2.5 years. And, you know, Randy Orton had been exiled from the group about 10 months prior to this, but it still ran with Batista and Triple H and Ric Flair. And then even once Batista defected, you still had the story of Evolution being told through Batista and Triple H. But once this match came and went and this pay-per-view came and went, it was kind of like the unofficial closing of the book on Evolution. So as much as this was story and it was in character, it was kind of done in truth as well. Because, yes, that's Evolution, but it was also Triple H putting Batista over finally. And Batista's talked about this so many times that Triple H was the guy who made him and took a chance on him and saw something in him. And in this story, and more specifically this match at main eventing this pay-per-view, this made Batista. And then Batista goes off on his own to a brand new brand, something that he's spoken about out of character that he found very difficult going over to SmackDown because the shows were so different at that point in time. And, you know, it gave Batista now the chance to be like, okay, you're on your own, go do something that doesn't involve anything to do with Evolution. And I just thought the psychology behind everything with this rivalry and that particular segment between these two was brilliant storytelling. And all in all, a very good pay-per-view. One that kicked off a really good summer in wrestling, as you know, you had the Hogan Shawn Michaels story, you had John Cena's first run on Monday Night Raw, you had a returning Matt Hardy to bring that real life story to television with Edge, and it was all kicked off with this one pay-per-view, and I highly suggest anyone go and watch it. Anyway, guys, that's all I got for you today. I hope you enjoyed Vengeance 2005. As always, you can get me on Twitter at ADemarco25. You can get Matt on Twitter at wrestling_audio, or you can email him each and every week for the WWE podcast mailbag. Anyway, guys, enjoy your weekend. I will be talking to you next week.
Thanks for listening to the WWE podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.